Hi, my name is Tracy Dodd and I'm with the Adelaide Business School with the University of Adelaide. Today I'm going to talk to you about my research regarding the proposed closure of AGL's Liddell coal-fired power station in New South Wales, Australia. I'm going to share with you the three things that I've studied: what happened, why we think it happened, and what can be learned from this case study. So firstly, what happened? In 2015, AGL announced its intention to close the coal-fired station based on economic, environmental and social reasons. Essentially, it was an ageing asset and the economics of renewables meant that replacing it yielded lower benefits. In 2017, AGL started the first stages of the closure. This was met with some political and public outcry, mostly at the federal level. Tim and I analysed one specific point in time, 2015 to 2018. This coincided with the year that AGL announced the closure of Liddell and the year after the first stage of the implementation of its closure. We content analysed comments in the media, as well as AGL's underpinning economic analysis. Our modelling examined three demand profiles. 1. Baseload demand. Demand which occurs all the time. Historically, coal-fired generation has been used to meet this. 2. Intermittent demand. Demand which occurs during the day. Historically, combined gas units have been used to meet this type of demand. 3 is peak demand. Demand which occurs only when air conditioners and heaters are switched on the hottest and coldest days of the year. Hydroelectric and quick-start gas generation have historically been used to meet this demand. Input assumptions were derived from AEMO and other academic sources. We established two scenarios to demonstrate why AGL's decision may have generated the significant stakeholder reactions that it did. The first scenario was based on current technology and market assumptions. The second scenario was based on technology and market assumptions from a decade ago. Our results and interpretation show that the electricity system is no longer suited to the ongoing operation of coal-fired power stations after 2022, and there's an overweighting of baseload capacity. The most economic form of energy production in Australia is no longer coal, but renewable wind generation. However, by conducting the same analysis using assumptions from a decade ago, without climate change considerations, the most economic replacement would have been a coal-fired power station. As such, changing market dynamics and conditions have altered the investment responses of Australian firms. However, it seems that policymakers are a bit out of step. In our case, AGL was somewhat pressured by some of the political actors to keep the relevant power station operating beyond its scheduled 2022 closure date. Our findings show that fully understanding the transition from coal to renewables is subjective. It requires considerations of our stakeholders' perceptions, and these must be taken into consideration. The implication of our case study and what lessons can be learned are that this case was complicated. We tackled this question from a grand challenger's perspective. Human-induced climate change is the quintessential grand challenge that represents a significant issue for the world. Grand challenges are different than wicked problems, as they are perceived as solvable. They place the power among those who can take action to agree solutions and can agree the source of the problem. Climate change can no longer be perceived as a wicked problem. Climate systems are predicted to alter and therefore negatively impact biological and economic processes and systems. In the past, global policy responses to mitigate the effects of dangerous, human-induced climate change has been lacking. Australian regulators, like many countries, have an international commitment through the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change to limit global warming to 2 degrees Celsius. The Climate Change Authority 2017 state that Australia should adopt a carbon budget of no more than 10 gigatons between 2015 and 2050 to meet their fair share of global budget reductions aimed at reducing the impact of dangerous climate change. To achieve the carbon budget set, the electricity sector must reduce greenhouse gas emissions to produce at least net zero emissions by 2050. However, substituting emission-intensive coal-fired energy with renewables must also take into consideration energy pricing and security. This presents a challenge for Australia, and climate change energy and policy have never been sufficiently integrated. This is despite consideration of this issue by the Australian government in 1989, over 30 years ago. In many ways, policy incongruence in this space could be due to the disagreement among practitioners and researchers about the sources of climate change, as well as whether additional costs should be imposed by the current generation, including electricity consumers, to avoid the cost of dangerous climate change on future generations. Currently, strategies to move toward lower greenhouse gas intensive sources of energy remain highly contested. In our case, AGL's position was that replacing Liddell with a mix of new technology was more reliable and cost-effective. Our economic modelling supported this. Stakeholders, however, did not agree, resulting in conflict and compromise. AGL agreed to extend the life of this highly polluting asset for 1 year past the close schedule date, to 2023. For market-based solutions to grand challenges, this case study highlights the need for further research and action across 3 key areas related to the social implications of the transition. 1. The need for further root cause analysis. Our case shows that the underpinning logic of the firm's decision caused conflict with stakeholders when they did not understand or agree with the firm-level solution. Further work to support the transition could look to develop shared models of decision-making based on root cause analysis, where stakeholders can share and agree assumptions that inform decision-making. 2. Opportunity for energy companies, or in fact any company in a social transition phase, and policymakers to skill their staff in conflict resolution. Subjective decision-making can become clouded when emotions become involved. In our case, legislators and the leaders of AGL took to the media to express their frustration at the other party in the negotiating room, often with language that involved an us, being the community, versus them, being the energy company. Such language is rarely helpful in negotiating mutually beneficial outcomes. 3. The social transition to a more sustainable future requires new paradigms beyond the delineation of economic, social, and environmental value. As a society, we can no longer ignore the interdependence of these 3 domains. We must understand and develop new systems that recognise that firms exist to create social value and rely on environmental assets to do so. Conflict arises when issues are considered from the 3-pronged approach of separating economic, social and environmental value, reinforce this unhelpful paradigm that firms must choose between maximising economic results at the expense of environmental and social value. Thank you.